Well, hello the world. Skwirls here, and we have another Tech Tuesday today. Today we're actually doing an entire PC desktop, gaming desktop rig build from complete scratch, essentially. Motherboard, GPUs, well, the CPU's already installed, but the idea is all the various components. You're going to see us putting up a gaming PC together, a mid-sized tower ATX, and the reason we're doing it is because it's actually a birthday surprise present for Tactic. This was actually one of our friend, Mortar Chemiker, we call him the Chemist, or as Tactics called him once or twice, El Chemisto De Muerto. But this was his idea, and so he got with me, and we're kind of pitching in together to build this rig for Tactic so that he has his very own PC gaming desktop as well, rather than just gaming on consoles and using his laptop to record with. So we're super excited about it, and actually I apologize for the wreck behind me, all that mess back there, because I've already built the PC, recording this intro for you now. So without further ado, guys, this Tech Tuesday, building a gaming rig. Stay tuned to the end to see the reaction of Tactic as we reveal this present to him. Alright world, Skwirls here, and it is, almost 6:30 in the morning here Monday morning, and yeah, I believe I've already filled you in by now, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it on the various parts, and I'll start assembly and kind of show you each piece, each step along the way as I complete them. So let me go ahead and show you the various parts. Hang on. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got all the parts out here. I've actually still got to look in the back of my basement here to see if I've got any SATA cables, but I'll go ahead and kind of show you each piece by piece. Of course, the chassis is the biggest thing right here. It is a mid-size ATX tower, not a full-size, but it's got plenty of room to fit all the parts that we need, or all the parts that we've acquired. If you look over there, there's my full size over there. Sorry for the mess in the room. So this is, about what, 2/3 the size, give or take. So if you're aware of the ATX sizing model, then this is a mid-size compared to a full size. It is by Thermaltake. It is the Thermaltake Versa 927, and this is the Snowball edition, or whatever they call it, Snowfall edition, something like that. It's the white one, right? So at the top here, I don't know how well you can see that, we've got USB 3.0, and then two regular USB 2.0s, and then a mic and a headphone jack, of course, and then there's the power and restart buttons. And this is a clear window to see inside of the case. So then over here, we got this sucker on a nice little deal on eBay, but it's a gigabyte board, as you can see there, the GA970A. This is the D3P edition of it, and we've got our PCIe Express 2.0 port, of course, and then a couple other PC ports as well. And then it already has a CPU installed on it. I don't know if I can get what it actually is on here, but it is an FX slot, and it is specifically the 8350, if I'm not mistaken. So this is an AMD CPU. This is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 4 or 4.2 gigahertz is the speed that it's set to right now. I think 4.2 might be in turbo. So 3 point something or 4.0 might be stock. I'm not 100% positive. I don't remember the exact specs on that. But this is an 8-core AMD processor, which already right off the bat, that makes it faster than mine. Which we've obviously talked about on past videos, past streaming videos. This is 8 gig of DDR3 RAM right there. One chip of 8 gig RAM. It does support 4. So if that was 8 all the way across, then that would of course be 32 gig of RAM fully installed. I do believe that I can grab 2 more 4 gig chips, so another 8 gig of RAM from a buddy of ours. so I might be doing that later this week. I'm not sure yet. And that's all installed on the board. That came just like that when we purchased it. So the Chemist had this fully compatible heatsink for the CPU that he was able to ship to me with some thermal paste as well. So I'll be, of course, installing that heatsink on top of that CPU once the motherboard has been mounted, or actually before the motherboard is mounted, because you do need to install a plate right there on the back side of that motherboard, which I'll get into as well as we go along. I'll skip over the graphics card first for a little bit here. We've got two drives right here. We've got a solid state for the OS and some critical systems, which, as you can see right here, is by Toshiba, and I believe this is a 240 gig solid state drive by Toshiba. And then we've got this also Toshiba 3 terabyte hard drive, 7200 RPMs, of course, right here. That was both of these we found on pretty good deals. And then over here we've got our power supply. So our power supply, I don't even remember who makes it. Yep, EVGA or EVGA. And it's just a 500 watt, but we did the math of the GPU with the CPU and general specs all around, and 500 watts should be more than sufficient to support this particular rig. Of course, if you went a little overboard or ever decided to do anything more than just the one GPU, or just I don't know, went crazy with some other stuff. I don't know how crazy you can go in a mid-sized tower, but in the event that he did, he might need to upgrade this power supply. But even the power supply in my full-size tower is only like a 700 watt. So 500 watts should be more than sufficient for what he needs, especially right now with this rig. And then the GPU, of course, we've got right here. This is an AMD Radeon R9 280, if I'm not mistaken. Where's the? Can we find it right here? Yep, there it is. I don't know how well you can read that. R9 280, 3 gig of GDDR5 RAM on board. And those are the specs that we've got. So the first thing that I'll be doing this morning is installing that heatsink onto the motherboard. Well, first I'll take that door off the side of the case. Then I'll install the heatsink onto the motherboard, make sure that everything is snug in that regard, and then I'll get the motherboard onto or inside of the case. Start plugging in. Well, I won't start plugging in any of the wiring until everything else is installed, but get the motherboard in there. And we'll kind of play it from there. I'll probably mount the drives next, and once I mount the drives, I will need to make sure that I actually have some SATA cables. So yeah, so that's what we've got. I'll see you on the next little bit here. Alright, just before I continue on, I wanted to make it a point to say that before I did any of that I just described, I did want to make sure that I had the SATA cables, because, to be quite frank, I'm the kind of person that didn't want to put in a bunch of effort if I knew I didn't have everything I needed. So yeah, so I went ahead and looked, and apparently I have 5 already open SATA cables and 1 even unopened, still packaged SATA cable. So I've got plenty to get the work of 2 drives that need the SATA cables done. I don't know why I pulled all of them out. I think I just made it a point to myself to say, hey, look, I've got more than the sufficient requirements in order to complete this rig. So let's get to it. All right. So when installing a heatsink onto the motherboard, usually there are instructions and they're pretty straightforward. Fortunately, I've done my fair share of AMD heatsinks or CPUs with their respective heatsinks that comes factory, and this does actually look like a pretty standard factory style heatsink. So what this does require is this plate needs to be installed on the back of the motherboard, on the back side of where the CPU goes. So that'll just kind of come in here. And for those of you hyper security or hyper safety people, yes, I'm aware that I'm not using an anti-static strap. But yeah, I haven't used one in a long time. But anyway, please feel free to read me in the comments if you deem fit. So as you can see, the screws are coming through the motherboard right here, 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 and here. And then you've got these little plastic guys that are going to go right on top of the motherboard. These little catches right here are for the sides of the heatsink. They're going to catch them in order to hold them and keep pressure down on the CPU. So those guys need to come with the clips facing out away from the CPU. So those will go in just like this, and then the other guy will come on just like so. And then you've got these 4 screws that are going to secure these 2 plastic pieces. Once they are secure, then you take the thermal paste, which I've got over there, do your nice little zigzagginess that you like to do on the CPU, and there are plenty of YouTube videos to show the various methods by which you can apply thermal paste. It's pretty straightforward, but the idea is you want the thermal paste evenly distributed, as even as possible across the CPU, because that's going to evenly distribute the heat across onto the surface area of the heatsink, which will then be distributed across the heatsink accordingly. But then this heatsink will go on top of that thermal paste, this side down, so this side will be touching the CPU. And after I remove this little plastic piece too. Notice how it says, please remove before install. So I'll grab that tab and remove it. Then this will sit right on top of here, and those little catchers will catch the clips on the 2 sides of the plastic. And then I'll pull this lever down, and it'll tighten the whole thing down onto the CPU, and we'll be good to go. Okay, the heatsink is in place. I used this lever. I flipped it over to lock it in place once the latches were attached on the 2 sides. And the last piece of installing the heatsink is plugging in the heatsink fan, this little guy, so that he gets power. Which goes literally right where there's a little plug right here that says CPU fan. Go figure. And it's even notched so that you know exactly how to plug it in the right direction. Just like that. And we're done. Alright, now on to opening up the case. Okay, so I've got the case opened up. There's the glass panel right over there. And I took a couple of the hard drive trays out of the bottom right hand corner because one of them had a little box of goodies in it. The little box of goodies, while I was hoping had some more SATA cables, did not. It has a couple small zip ties for cable management, and then a bunch of little screws of all sorts of sizes depending on your various needs for hard drives, or for optical drives, or for motherboard, or what have you, or other fans, etc. So let me just go ahead and show you, for those of you that have never done this before, the kinds of things you can expect when looking inside of an empty chassis. So we've got this flat cable right here, flat ribbon cable right here, and on the end we've got all these various single and two-prong plugs. Well, in this particular case, which is not always the case when you're opening up a chassis, for the record, but in more recent years, they are now all labeled. It used to be, well, actually, these are usually labeled. It's the motherboard plugs that you're plugging them into that oftentimes haven't been labeled traditionally. So hopefully, in our case, that's not. They did actually label them, but these are the power and reset buttons and their respective lights. Which would be up here. I'm not sure where the lights will be. Maybe they're hidden kind of underneath this black area. I'm not sure. But the idea is that these go to the buttons and the lights that they respond to. So I'll put that off to the side for now. Also coming out from the top area, we've got these 2 plugs right here, which one of them is the audio, which would be both our mic and headphone out. So that's going to get plugged into the motherboard for I/O activity or responsiveness. And then this guy right here is our USB 2.0 plugs. The 2 USB 2.0 plugs on the top of the case. And then finally on the top of the case we do have a USB 3.0. So of course, for those of you familiar with 3.0, they are blue. And this one is no different. And it is labeled accordingly as well. As you can see here, it says USB 3.0. Alright, And then inside the case, we've got a couple other plugs. Over here on the front, we have 2 fans, so these will these fans can either get plugged into the board, or if we have adapters for them to get plugged into the power supply, then we can do that as well. And then likewise on the back, we've got a rear exhaust fan that will be again plugged into either the motherboard or the power supply. So something to take note of before I cut this little clip is in the chassis there are these little riser up screws, screw holes right here, and then there should be at least 2 more. All right, there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. So these are for mounting your motherboard. Our motherboard is a little bit wider, so it's going to extend out to here. Unfortunately, I don't have any more risers, so what I might actually do is install these guys, move them over, depending on where the holes are, the screw holes are on the motherboard itself. But the idea here is you want, obviously, even weight distribution, holding your motherboard securely to the chassis without any issue, right? So our next step is going to be installing that motherboard in here. Okay, so the power supply, the motherboard is in place. I actually didn't wind up having to move any of the standoff screws. I think that's what they're called, standoffs. They look like this. This is what they look like. Where basically they screw into the chassis itself. And then they stand off from the chassis siding just a little bit to give the motherboard some breathing room, and provide a base to screw into from through the motherboard. So those standoffs were in their original positions. I did not move them. They were here, 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 up here, and right there as well. So 6 screws. Definitely sufficient and ample enough to hold this in place, and it's definitely in place now. So all I'm going to do now is go ahead and plug in the system fans into the motherboard. I've already done one of them actually. So this guy, this exhaust fan right here, in order to get power, he can plug into what says right here, system fan 1. And then over here on the right hand side, there's something that says system fan 2. And then up here, I was looking to see if there were any other system fans on the entire motherboard, and I don't see anything labeled system fan, but ultimately they all work the same way, where they plug into these 3-prong little pole thing type plugs right here. But this one says power fan. I don't know why it's labeled power fan. It might be labeled for power supply, but the power supply is going all the way down here. And it's plugged into power, so it certainly has power to power its own fan. But we have 2 other system fans, so I'm going to go ahead and plug them into system fan 2 and into power fan as they are labeled. So this guy, see, you'll notice the 3 holes there with the little notch right there, so you know exactly how to plug him in, like so. Maybe like so. Yep. And then this guy, unwind him a little bit, and he'll get plugged in right here. Like so. Alright, and then I'll just use some, either you use some zip ties or just some twine that they were already wrapped in, and I'll manage all this cabling. I'll actually wait till the end to manage the cabling, so that if I can group cables together, then I'll go ahead and do so. So next up, I probably should have done it first, and so all of you that are watching this video after the fact can go ahead and read me in the comments if you want. But next up, I'm going to go ahead and screw in the power supply. I definitely should have done that before the motherboard. I haven't built a PC custom-wise in a while, okay? And all of the custom stuff that I do now on my tower is after the fact that it's already put together, so bear with me while we get these various parts in, but I'll go ahead and do the power supply now. Alright, the power supply is in place. For those of you that haven't done this before, it goes with the fan on the power supply actually goes on the underside, and if you look at the underside, there is a grate to allow airflow to that power supply, and there should be, typically there's going to be some kind of gap underneath your tower. Some towers it's bigger than others, but the idea is still the same. If there is absolutely 100% no grate under here, no allowance for airflow to the power supply, then you obviously have to flip the power supply the other way, because you do need air to the power supply. Otherwise, it's going to heat up, and that's no bueno. So, all of the cables from the power supply go out the back end, or the front end rather, the front end of the case, towards the front end of the case, so that you have access to all those cables. They get plugged into various paraphernalia and aspects and properties and components of the PC build. And then on the backhand side, we've got it screwed in with 4 of these screws right here, 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 and here. All right, cool beans. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and put in the drives. The drives are going to be, so these 2 drives are going to get installed into these drive bays, either here or up here. The solid state is, since it's the smaller, what is that, 2.5 inch, I believe, form factor versus 3.5 inch form factor of the hard drive. The SSD is probably going to be up in this little smaller bay up here, but I'm gonna do some investigating and see how I can manage this and get them nice and snug in here. So I've got the solid state drive is in. As you can see, there was this tiny 2.5 inch bay right here. There are screw holes, I believe, on the other side. I can't easily figure out how to get to them. I'm sure it's probably very dumb and easy for me to get somehow to the other side of this particular casing. But ultimately, solid state drive or hard drives alike, it doesn't take much to secure them in place, and it's not like the desktop is going to be it's not like a laptop where you're going to be constantly moving it around. So I do have it secured with these 2 screws, and it's pretty in there. It's not going anywhere. Now, as for the hard drive, the physical spinning disk hard drive, it is going to go in this bay here, into one of these little housing units. So if you've never done this before, I just want to show how simple and easy this is. There are screw holes, yes, 3 screw holes on each side of this hard drive. However, you don't need to actually screw them in. The way this works is there are these little pins on both sides of this plastic housing, and the plastic housing itself is kind of flimsy, right? So all you do is line it up with those pins. I'm going to try to do this with one hand. There we go. And it's just kind of secured in there now. Now this, obviously, the way this is right now, because this plastic is flimsy, I could certainly bend it and take the hard drive out. But the way this is designed is I can literally take this and slide it. I should be able to, there we go, slide it right in just like that. You heard it click into place. And now this can't bend, therefore that hard drive isn't going anywhere. So the only way to take this out right now is to simply squeeze these, and then this will slide, maybe, there we go, and this will slide back up and out. Alright, and that's pretty much how simple that is. Now I have 2 other blank housings here, so I'll just go ahead and put this one in here, and then the other one's already in. So if we wanted 2 more drives, then we could put them here very easily, and then optical drives would go up here. Optical meaning like disk drives, DVD drive, CD drive, those would go up here. Or any other type of front panel. Well, I'm not actually sure if this front panel opens yet or not. I haven't tried to open it. But typically any front panel access type inserts you would put in here, like fan controllers and similar things like that. So now I am going to go ahead and grab this guy. I'll go ahead and showcase this too as well. These are the front panel lights and buttons that I described earlier. They go down here, and I mentioned earlier that the problem sometimes you run into is figuring out exactly how to plug these in. Now, I'm going to try to do this as best I can with the lighting that I have. Let me try to turn this just a little bit here. There we go. So now we are right side up at least. And it is very hard to see. But it looks like at the top left we've got the power LED. Bottom left we have hard drive plus and minus. Top in the red portion, here, we've got power plus and minus, and then the reset button is in right underneath the red in that green looking area, minus plus. Yeah, that's how it's labeled. It's not labeled plus minus left right, it's labeled left right minus plus. Interesting. And then there are a couple other things. There is an onboard speaker, or there is a speaker spot if you had an onboard speaker in the chassis, which we do not. And then underneath that, in the bottom right, it looks like there's the power LED plus and minus. So the way this works is, this is a little bit annoying, but none of these things really ultimately are going to hurt anything, especially since nothing's going to be writing to your hard drives right now, right at the beginning. But if you got any of these mixed up, you would just simply cut the power to the machine, flip them around, try again. Not that big a deal. So first up, we've got the power. Yep, power switch. Power SWs for power switch. So understanding which side is plus and which side is minus is kind of the hard part of these. I'm gonna typically. All right. So in this case, we've actually got two different colors. We've got black and gray. So I'm gonna kind of assume that the black is the plus and the gray is the minus. And it actually, if you look at some of these other ones, so this hard drive LED right here says, there we go. It says plus and minus top bottom. So we're just gonna go ahead and follow that as well. Plus minus top bottom here. And plug it into the power switch plus minus, which down here was, let's see, the power is the red one. The power is the red one, so then I just plug it in plus minus in the direction that it indicates. Oh, where'd it go? Power switch plus minus. This is quite tricky to do here. Okay, so that's in there, and then you do so with the other ones here. So I'll come back when I've done this, since it would be much easier if I had two hands. So yeah. Okay, so I got those all plugged in. I don't know how well you can see them there, but they are all plugged in. And again, they're just the front panel LEDs and buttons right here. So ultimately, worst case scenario, I turn things on, the buttons don't work, the lights aren't turning on, and I cut power to the system and try again. Even veteran PC builders can wind up messing this up at times. So it's not that big a deal. Now, before I go and plug anything else into the system, I do want to make sure that one last component is mounted, which means plugging it into the motherboard in this case, and that is the graphics card, the GPU, graphics processing unit. Now, in the case of this one, it is 2 rows wide. And what I mean by rows, look at the little hooks there. There's 2 of those hooks. It is 2 rows wide. Some graphics cards are 1 row wide. I don't know if any are 3 row wide. Maybe some. I don't know. Most of the ones I deal with are 2 rows wide, and if you look at the back here, they are 2. I have 2 open spots here that I've taken. These little panels on this particular chassis are just perforated, so you just like take them. Here, I'll show you. You just kind of take them like so. You just push. There you go. You can kind of see it cracking underneath here. These are just perforated just like that. So I already did that. I took these 2, just bent them a little bit, and they popped out pretty easily. I don't want to do that to the others because we have no reason to remove them. So there's no point in having that much extra open space there and removing those if we don't need to. So we will be taking this, and if I actually just fake mount it right now, if I just hold it here and pretend for a sec, just like this, you can look on the backhand side here, and you can see just like how it would look using up those 2 rows, and it is going to get plugged into that big long black plug right there, which is the PCIe Express port 16, as you can see labeled right there. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and plug in the graphics card. Okay, The graphics card is in place, and by the way, for those of you that have never done this before, there is typically a rubber or plastic dust cap on the plug of the graphics card itself that you do need to remove before you can plug it into there. I forgot to mention that earlier, so you just slide that off, and then this literally, it just plugs right in. You can almost hear it click, you can definitely feel it click into place, and once it's in, then you just secure it with a couple screws, 1 or 2 screws depending on the thickness of depending on how many rows wide it takes up in your chassis. And in this particular case, in this chassis, there were these nice little screw holes for me to kind of put in my screwdriver through them like so in order to screw them in. So that was kind of nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug the rest of everything in. Now this graphics card, most graphics cards, by the way, do have some kind of Molex power, additional power plugs. In this case, there are 2 6-pin Molex plugs, which are going to be found on your power supply, hopefully. I didn't actually check this power supply ahead of time, but it looks like we've got them covered right here. So this actually has potential for 2 8-pins that are where 2 of them are separated off so that you can use them as 2 6-pins. So this is going to be our graphics card plug right here. The way that works, I'll just go ahead and show you real quick. And it's actually labeled, in fact, it says PCIe. Bam, done. So you know it's going to be for something like a graphics card. So this gets plugged in like so. This way or the other way? Let's find out. Yep, this way. Like so. There we go, it's in. And I'm just bending this away so that it doesn't get in the way. And then the second one right here, the same exact thing. It's going to be a little bit of a squeeze, but it should be good. Come on. Get in there. There we go. Alright, there we go. Now both are in, like so. Alright. Sweet. So, one plug down, and now all the rest of these... No, I'm just kidding. We don't need to use all the rest of them. Most power supplies come with several extras, just in case you need them, typically used for fans. These flat guys right here are power cables for the SATA. So these will get plugged into the hard drives, which... funny story. I think I might have actually... Yep, it looks like I plugged in the hard drive in the wrong direction. The hard drive is typically easier if the plugs are facing you. I mean, I could run the cables on the other side and plug them in, but yeah, I'll try to do that and see if it works out. If not, you might see me flipping that around. But yeah, everything else just kind of gets plugged into what needs power. So the things that need power would be the 2 hard drives, and then they have data cables as well, which are those SATA cables that I have over there. Those SATA cables are going to get plugged into the motherboard right here where it says SATA 301031425. And the purpose of those numbers are the order in which they are typically efficiently read on the motherboard. So your the solid state drive, which is going to have your operating system in this case, is going to get plugged into 0, the top left. And then the data hard drive will get plugged into number 1, which is directly underneath of it. And then if we had any optical drives, say we had 2 CD drives, we would plug them into 2 and then 3, like so. All right. What else? Oh yeah, and then the what's this guy? So the other chassis plugs as well. So there's the USB, the audio, and the USB 3.0. I can go ahead and plug those in as well. So we've got, what's up first here? We've got this HD audio one. Come on, there we go, HD audio. So what we need to do is look around on the case. They're usually going to be on the bottom. Yep, there it is. It's labeled F audio for typically what I've equated it to as front audio. So then this gets plugged in. You'll notice that it goes that there's a little gap in one of the pins. That is to help identify the direction at which it gets plugged in down here. If you look, actually, you might not be able to see. Yeah, you can't really see it on the video, but it's in the bottom left. So the orientation that we need to plug this in at would be like this. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that. Is it in there? Looks like not. It is. It looks like it is not. Come on. Again, kind of hard to do while I'm holding a camera, so I apologize. There we go. Alright, so that's plugged in there. Next up, we've got this guy, which should be the USB, the regular USB 2.0, which if we look down here, we've got front USB 3, and then we've got USB 3.0. So front USB 3, I think the number 3 in this case is referring to an order. So if we look, yep, okay. If we look right here, come on, focus camera. There we go. We've got front USB 1, front USB 2, and then this one's front USB 3. So if we have that many USBs, then we want to plug them in the order of 1, 2, then 3. In this case, we've only got one of these, so we will plug it into 1. It is also, you'll also note that there is a gap in pins so that we know how to plug it in, the direction at which we're plugging it in. So we're looking for the gap in a corner. In this case, the gap in the corner is in the top left. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that gap so that it's in the top left. There we go. That went in. Did that go in? Yep, that went in much easier than the first one. All right. And then finally, the last front panel thing that we've got is this USB 3.0. This one is actually notched, and it is the one labeled front USB 3.0. So this will go, of course, with the notch, which in this case is in the top. Like so. There we go. Plugged in nice and neatly. All right, so that's all the front panel stuff. You can obviously see we've got wires going every which way. Again, I mentioned that I'm going to do some cable management at the end so that I can bunch cables that can be bunched together and so on and so forth. We have four little mini zip ties and a bunch of twine that I can use, so no big deal there. I'm going to go ahead and plug everything else in now. All right, everything is plugged in, and actually let me go ahead and take back off this back panel. It'll allow a little bit more light in, and you can kind of see what I did back here too. So as you can see, I did route some of the cableage through these holes here for some of the cable management. It's not my finest work, but it'll definitely do. On the front side, you can kind of see a little bit more how I routed some of those cables. So I have several cables back here that went to the back. Some of them did not. These are the front panel ones right here on the bottom of the motherboard. I have them routed through here, not zip tied, but twined together, and then twined with the graphics card piece right here. And then all of these cables kind of bunched up. There we go. Kind of bunched up and twined together right here, going to the back side of the chassis. Something else I forgot to mention when I was talking about everything that needed power, the motherboard, of course, needs its own power as well, which has the largest Molex, I guess, styled plug. It's not Molex, I know, I apologize. I don't know what the actual form factor is called, but you can see it right here. Can I kind of get my camera to focus on it? Probably not. But that's it right there. It is a 24-pin plug. It's a 20 or 24 typically on motherboards. In this case, it was a 24. It gets plugged in right here off of the power supply, of course. So now that everything is plugged in, oh, and I also have the SATA connections going into the hard drive and the SSD going into the motherboard. It's kind of hard to see back there. There they are, plugged into the motherboard into ports 0 and 1. You can see them actually on the back side as well. Maybe here, right here. There we go. There's the hard drive getting plugged in, and then the SSD is plugged in right here. All right, sweet deal. So that's this particular guy right here, and I'm gonna get the doors back on, and I've got the power connection, and we're gonna plug it into a monitor and see what happens. Okay, so here we go, world. We are plugged in. The doors are back on it. I have, usually you want to be wired in with a keyboard and mouse. Unfortunately, I don't have a spare wired keyboard and mouse. I mean, I can get a wired keyboard and mouse off of my desktop if I absolutely have to, if this doesn't work. But I do have a spare wireless one, so I have the receiver plugged in here. And then I have an HDMI plugged in off of the graphics card. Usually I prefer not HDMI, but I don't think it matters in modern day and age. It used to be once upon a time where you had to plug into an onboard graphics processor if you had one before installing drivers for the graphics card, but I think we'll be okay with that one. An HDMI is plugged in, which is going up to my spare TV here in the Nerd Cave living room. And then the power is plugged in. Now, when I plugged in the power, I was expecting to see some kind of green light from the power supply, and I don't see anything. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't recall if I should be seeing one exactly or not, but ultimately we will find out. So let me go ahead and grab the remote. Turn on the TV. Maybe. There we go. And make sure the input is onto not my Fire Stick. Where's the input button on this thing? Am I missing it? Oh, source. Source. Alright, so if it's not that one, oh, it's not the Fire Stick, so it looks like it's HDMI 3 then. Okay. Enter. Alright, so now we just, well, let me make sure that the keyboard and mouse are actually turned on. Okay. I'm always nervous the very first time we turn stuff on, you know what I mean? Okay. And which one of these is the actual power button? Looks like this one says power on it, so we'll go ahead and hit that one, and look at that! We've got power. She looks pretty. Now we're hoping to see something on the screen above us. I don't see anything yet. I feel like by now we should be seeing something. It would have... I can't tell if the graphics card is on or not right now, to be honest with you. It's hard to tell. Let me go back to the remote and check other sources. Oh, there is another source here that just showed up, sorry, on the TV. So I wonder if it's now that guy. But that HDMI 4 was not available earlier, so I wonder if that's what it is. Let me do a reset here and see if anything pops up on the TV now. Or how about we just do a straight power. Cut the power, see if that'll work. Usually if you hold down the power for X amount of time, then it'll cut the power. It appears that that is not working. I wonder if I got these switched, if the reset button is now the power button. Nope. Okay. So we will just straight cut the power. Okay. Alright, so change of plans. I took off the side panel and verified that the GPU is spinning the fans. I can't tell if the GPU, if the graphics card is supposed to have lights on it or not. So if it is, the lights aren't turning on. But I don't see any lights on it, so my best indicator to make sure that I know it's working is just that the fans are turning on, and they are in fact turning on. So I moved it to here. The problem with the other setting, the other location, was that the TV that I was plugging it into, those HDMI cables are have kind of been hit or miss. So I don't necessarily trust the one that I was plugging into, and it's going through the wall. so I don't really have an easy way of replacing it and changing out the HDMI cable. I don't have easy access to the back of that TV. Whereas now I'm in my studio, and in my studio I have a TV that right now it's actually doing an HDMI splitter with my desktop, so that middle monitor there, the one that I normally game on, is currently being split, so it's being viewed there as well as on this hand side, so that if I was recording myself in the studio, then I have full access to control my computer from this side of the wall. But another benefit of this is I am now using a brand new HDMI cable that I have plugged into the desktop, one that I've literally never used before. I took it out of the packaging and just plugged it in moments ago. Now that is, that's almost a double-edged sword, right? Like, one, I've never used it before, so I can verify that it isn't. I can say that I've never seen it broken, but at the same time, I've never seen it work. So, but at least I know that it's brand new. And secondly, I can change the input on this one to know, in fact, that it is plugged into HDMI 2 right now. So I'm going to go ahead and go to HDMI 2 and go. There we go, blank screen. And so now when I turn it on, I definitely know that I'm plugged into the right thing, the right source. So here we go. We are turned back on, and we are looking at the TV and hoping for something. No signal. Oh, no signal went away. And it still says no signal. Interesting. Well, I have a couple other options available to me. I can try not to use the HDMI. It doesn't appear that there is an onboard graphics on this. Yeah, there is not. There's no onboard graphics on this motherboard, so I can't use an onboard. I have to rely on the graphics card. But there's a DVI port on the graphics card that I can try to use. I also have a display port that I can try to use as well. So a couple other options available to me. I'm going to try them all. Something else that's actually something that I'm going to try first is plugging in an actual keyboard wired instead of relying on the wireless, because the wireless might require some drivers that are not installed yet anywhere. Now, you would think that there would be some kind of something installed directly on the motherboard before we're accessing the hard drive yet, but in my experience, plugging wired things in to make sure things work is always a good idea. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to get a wired keyboard, wired mouse, and we'll plug that in first and try again. Okay, so after really thinking through this, I realized how incredibly trivial or dumb the solution probably is. Now, I haven't tried this yet. I just want to point this out before I do it. In the vast majority of cases, the CPU needs its own power source. That you'll find right here. See that ATX 12V, 12 volt with 8-pin power connector right there? That is for the CPU. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not giving the CPU any power. So that would explain, I think, why at first the TV is saying there's a signal, and then seconds later, or 1 second later, it goes back to no signal. The motherboard is giving power to the GPU, which is sending a signal through the HDMI, but then the signal that it's sending, after moments going through post, it realizes there's no CPU, therefore we're going to cut everything off. So for a brief moment there's hope, and then nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in, and we're going to try this again. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we had to take off the back panel, untwine these cables, find the one cable, which I mentioned earlier actually in this video, that it looked like a Molex, but I didn't know what it was called. But anyway, kind of silly of me. I should have known better. And it's now coming up this way. They never give in my experience, I feel like they never give enough slack for the CPU plug. But there it is, going in the top left of the motherboard. Everything is plugged back in. We should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this power button right now. Cross your fingers. Here we go. Is it gonna? It still says no. Oh, then it said not supported. Not supported is still not a good sign though. Aha! Select proper boot device and press any key. That is beautiful. All right, that's exciting. I'm kind of wondering if I can go back to the living room now, because I'd much rather do this in the living room than out here. So sweet deal. That is a beautiful, beautiful screen. I have a boot device. I have a bootable USB with Windows 10 Home Edition on it, which we are going to install, and that is of course going to take a ridiculously long amount of time because nobody likes to install Windows. But let's go ahead, and I'm actually curious if this power button is going to shut off now. Aha, it is working now. Beautiful. Everything is working as it should, at least thus far. So I'm going to move this over to the living room so that I have easier eyes on it, and we're going to start installing Windows. All right, we are back in the living room of my nerd cave here, and I've got the bootable USB drive on the back here. Can I see it? Yep, there it is, right there. And it automatically went ahead and booted straight into the boot sequence for Windows 10. And by the way, I am able to use my wireless keyboard and mouse, so you do not need the wired in this particular case. It was able to detect them just fine. They do work. I'll go ahead and show you. See? Woohoo. All right. So so United States, English, US, and we're going to hit next and install now. I assume it's going to install it on the proper SSD. Well, it says setup is starting, so we're probably still going to go through a selection process. But anyway, you'll see me back when we're all set up and all functioning and all ready and running, so woohoo. Well, all right, world. It took a couple hours, but it looks like we've finally gotten to the end here, and we've got Windows 10 Home Edition successfully installed. The working PC is down there, of course, on the floor. There is this weird buzzing sound coming from the CPU fan. It might be a loose fan, which would be incredibly unfortunate, but several of the parts were kind of here and there. We got them from friends and from ourselves, and found some nice deals. So if the CPU fan is in fact loose, that would be unfortunate, but it is what it is, and we might just have to replace it and just kind of live with the buzzing, at least for the time being. But I'm sure Tactic is gonna enjoy gaming. On well, it should be able to withstand max settings, or at least pretty close to max settings for most games that he's going to be wanting to play. Yeah, so stay tuned from Tactic. He'll probably mention this at some point in a future video coming up soon, whenever he gets everything up and running on it the way he likes. And of course, we do still have to install some drivers, which I'll go ahead and probably do with him in the room as we set it up in his house and whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this particular Tech Tuesday, and yeah. Pretty sweet build. In fact, like I said, the CPU is actually better than my current CPU in my build. So I'm really excited for Tactic, and I hope you guys are too, and hopefully we'll be seeing some pretty sweet gaming streaming from this new desktop that he has here in the near future here on the R&D. As always, guys, stay squirrely. Catch you next time. All right. So I just picked up a Steam gift card. Yep, Steam gift card, which we will present to Tactic in this ginormous Spider-Man birthday card. In case you didn't know, Tactic is a big fan of Spider-Man, which says, "It's your birthday. It's your birthday. Bet you're climbing the walls with all the excitement. Hope it's as amazing as you are." And then down here at the bottom, I'll see if I can get that on the camera. From El Chemisto De Muerto and the R&D. And for those of you that didn't know, El Chemisto De Muerto is what Tactic was calling Mortar Chemiker. Is one of our friends that we play with, who's several states away, but he wanted to be a blessing to Austin, and just kind of came up with this whole idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this this card into here and present the card to Austin. I'm gonna try to record the whole thing too, and his reactions and whatnot. But when he opens the card, he'll see the Steam gift card, and then I'll proceed to say, well, you're gonna need something to go with that Steam gift card, and take him to my car. Hello.
Hello. What's up?
Were you expecting me at all? I wasn't
No.
sure if Jess said it was coming or not.
No.
Well, hey, happy birthday.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's actually from Andrew and a few of us.
Oh. I like the card.
Yeah, I like the card too.
That's awesome. Yo! That's cool. El Chemisto De Muerto.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So, Steam's obviously for PC.
Well, obviously. I have a
Obviously.
PC.
It's really hard to do.
Where the heck is... Oh, it's over there. I was like, I didn't even see your card.
So I think Andrew like asked you a few weeks ago or a week ago, like, hey, what case do you like the best or whatever.
Yeah.
He was asking for you.
Oh, man.
I finished building it this morning.
Dude. I love you guys.
We love you too, man.
Thank you. Oh, man. Wow.
It's actually got a more powerful CPU than I have right now. The graphics card's only a few years old.
What am I gonna do with that? Oh my god.
This guy's the limit now.